Right, so we have our boards all painted and we have our drawings. Bit of an allergy going on this morning, so I'm sorry for the way I sound. Right, so this was our little Michelin one we've done. Sometimes we just sort of mark it out on the board direct, but sometimes for the customer we just draw it up on a bit of paper and they can actually see what it's going to be. So now what we've done, how do we get this on here? So what we do is we actually turn it over, we have a bit of charcoal, chalk, whatever, and we just rub it over the back of our design. Once we've done that, we'll then get a little bit of cotton wool and we'll just lightly, very lightly, just rub the excess off of our drawing. That way that when we do it, we get more of the line as opposed to just a big smudge over our panel. So once we've done that, we're now going to lay our artwork on top of our panel. Now what we've done is we've cut 4 little holes out, and what we'll do is we'll put tape over those, and that will then obviously allow this to then be stuck to our panel. So once we've positioned our panel where we want, we'll get a little bits of tape and we can just stick them down, and if we don't like it we can put it off and we can just move it again. It's obviously important to make sure you do get it in the right place. Right, so now it's now fixed onto our panel. So all we have to do now is just to get a pencil and we now just trace around over the lines, and that's that. So let's go. The secret obviously is remembering where you've been. But even though this drawing is only a guide, we still go back to the original as a reference to make sure that it's correct. Take it off. And there we just have it marked out. Very quick, very simple, and it's just easy to follow. Right, moving on. Now obviously we're using one-shot signwriting enamel. Obviously you don't need to key up any surface you paint on, because obviously signwriting enamel was designed to adhere to most surfaces provided it's grease free. But what I always do is, as well as obviously it's white spirit based, but sometimes it's always good to have a small bottle of, that's the white spirit one. We have a little thinners bottle and we also have some degreaser. Now sometimes obviously I'm not always the cleanest, and if I get a bit of paint on my hands and you wipe it off with white spirit, that generally tends to leave an oily residue and it spreads the paint around. Where if you use a bit of degreaser to wipe the paint off, it's instantly dry. You don't get that horrible greasy and sort of feel to your fingers. And also if we do get a smudge on our paintwork or our maul sticks touch something, if you wipe it off with white spirit, that can stay wet for, could be 5 minutes before it evaporates, which means you can't paint over it again, because obviously it will just, the paint will just creep out into the spirit. Where if you use a bit of degreaser, you just wipe it off, it wipes off clean and it's dry. It won't affect your panel, it won't affect the original paintwork because it's non-aggressive, but it does wipe off certainly the one-shot paint, very quick, very simple, and doesn't leave that oily residue behind that white spirit does. Right, so now what we'll do is we'll go and take this over there, we'll go and put it up on the wall, and then we'll just then signwrite it. Okay. Okie dokie. Right. Right, so now we're ready to sign write. We're actually breaking in a new brush today. So one thing is with new brushes, they don't always work out the box. Sometimes you have to persevere and then it turns into quite a good brush. And occasionally you do get a brush that no matter what you do, it's pretty much not much cop for sign writing at all. So yeah, it's always interesting breaking in a new brush. Right, obviously brush, palette, we paint one shot, my little dipper there with some thinners in, and obviously this is my maul stick. Obviously I'm a traditional sign writer, so we've learned to do things on upright surfaces, because obviously when you sign write vehicles and shop fronts, it's not something you know, it's not laying down, so this is why we do things like this. You'll find probably a lot of pinstripers who do sign writing will do it laying down, because they're used to doing things on a flat surface. It's just different, but this is how we do things because this is just the way we've been taught. Right, let's see how this goes. And also I'm getting the age now, I need my glasses so I can see something. And one other little thing, if you are watching, it's not my technique with my finger being up, it's just that I've got well, probably about 13 years ago now, my hand was all smashed up. I've got a couple of solid knuckles and some metal plates in the back of my hand, so my middle finger doesn't bend, so it's not my technique. If you're wondering, don't try and copy it, because it won't get you anywhere. It's just, unfortunate, it's just where it is. Right, let's start. And I have to say, at the moment, this brush is looking not very promising. So I think I shall go and swap it out in a minute for another one. They do need breaking in, but let's try a little bit more and see. We use the paint a bit thicker and sometimes that sort of helps. Okay. Obviously if you have a good brush, then obviously you should be able to do your thick thins and twist the brush and get a nice stroke without leaving too much of a sort of a grass edge on the end, but this one is proving not to be very good at the moment. There's a bit of a rogue one short hair in there somewhere that seems to break free when we want to turn, but we will persevere. A good brush should be able to do two sides of a line at the same time. That's the difference. But this little kiddie is making it not so easy. That's it, we're back with an older brush. Mind you, we do so many different things at Mustang Sally. I mean, it has been about 6 months, I think, since, no, 4 months I suppose, since we've last done a bit of sign writing. Not that it's an excuse, but it does take a little while just to get back into it. this is the first time you've seen any sort of work being done, Mustang Sally, we do have other videos you can go and check out with sort of shows you reasons why we do things the way we do. It's worth a look at. And for those of you who've sort of not heard of a maul stick or not even used one, it's worth giving it a go. It's just an extra tool which just allows you to rest your hand and just move your fingers. It takes the pressure off. The thing is now, with there seems to be more of a following for pinstriping as regards people making brushes. There doesn't seem to be so many people out there making signwriting brushes. The problem we find is there's people, they're making the brushes now but they don't really know what they're used for. Unlike the lining brushes seem to be tailor-made purely for people with different lengths and styles of lining. So the biggest problem we have is finding a brush that actually works. They all look very nice, but we used to have quills. Well, you still get quills, and the hairs used to be uncut because you never want a brush that's been cut. But it's just finding one that actually it's just a good quality brush. The one thing is, I suppose now, is I don't do enough of everything now. When I was a signwriter full time and before the accident, obviously I suppose I was much better. But now, let's say we do bits of airbrushing, we do car restoration work, a bit of sculpting, we do such a wide range of things now that I think it's, you're never going to be as good as if you're doing it 24/7 all the time. Certainly for me, when your eyesight starts, little things change, and certainly with my hand now, it doesn't work as well as it used to work. I suppose there's two types of, well, you see a lot of people, they don't bother using a palette, they just tend to mix up the paint in a little pot and they just dip from that pot. Now, I'm not well, I suppose I was always taught, a bit snobby really, that it was always the self-taught that used the pot. Now, I think it's, at the end of the day, it's whatever works for you. But the thing is, the reason we use a palette is we are constantly mixing the paint up to different thicknesses. If we're doing a straight, we'll use the paint a little bit thicker. If we're doing a curve, a round, then we'd obviously reduce it a little bit to make it a bit thinner so it's a bit faster and the brush can flow a bit easier. Now obviously if you're using straight out of a pot, then what happens is that paint is always, once you've mixed it up, it's constantly then drying out, getting thicker. Therefore, the consistency is always changing. Now, as I say, you'll get people out there who are bloody good at what they do and it works for them. What I think is the problem is you get people new coming into doing signwriting or doing pinstriping, and the thing is you don't want to learn and start off with bad habits. Now, I'm not saying that what they're doing is wrong. What I'm saying is you need to learn the basics first to understand why they're doing things differently. Once you've learned the correct way of doing something, then you can adapt it to suit you and do shortcuts. But just following someone who's already done those shortcuts and you're copying them, you don't understand the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. That's why you need to go back to doing it right first and then going from there and adapting it to suit yourself. So it's not as if to say, oh, I'm doing it this way so I'm right and they're doing it their way and they're wrong. It's just that they've been doing it a long, long time and they have the skill. If they're working out of a pot, it works for them. They're working really fast, they're not getting the problems that a person who's a bit slower would be doing it. Which is why everything, there's always different ways of doing things, but you need to know the reasons why first, and then you can adapt. That's what we're trying to say. Now I'm lucky, this is obviously for a friend of mine's, for his garage. He's got a little shed he's just building now, and he's into his lorries and things, so we're doing a cut little signs and we do the little Peterbilt one as well. Which is good really, because it gives me a lot of leeway, because at the end of the day there's no pressure. It doesn't have to be perfect, even though there is only one way to do a job and that's the right way. So that's sort of not necessarily true. We have our own standards, so we want things to be right. But the one thing I suppose that has been bothering me, I've been a member of a lot of Facebook groups, pinstriping, airbrushing for sort of newcomers and things like that. Now, obviously we do leave comments and things. I mean, there is a very big cult in pinstriping. Now, they do get upset when you leave comments, some of them, because you know, everyone, all the newbies, you know, oh well, it's right, you know, it's whatever works. Well, no, it's not. There is a right way and a wrong way, and first you have to learn how. It's like people say, you know, if you was to learn how to fire a pistol, you go to the army and they would teach you how to fire the gun. If you turned up and said, I want to be gangland style and I want to turn it on the side, well, they would kick you out, give you a slap down the head, whatever. There's only one way. There's no such thing as a left-handed gun, right-handed gun, unless it's specially made for you, but generally you are taught to fire a rifle in a certain way, and that is it. And it's the same with this. There's a right way and then you can adapt it yourself. Well, yeah, one of the other things is, okay, there is a lot of people now that obviously want to be learning sign writing. Now, lettering follows a certain set of rules. You can try and make up your own style of lettering, but believe you me, it's not that easy. You think it is, but in reality it's not. But if you actually look at lettering, it does follow certain rules. Obviously you have a top and bottom line, and all your straights will sit on top of those lines. However, your spacings, your round letters will always fall below and above the line, because basically they're slightly bigger. Two straights together, you leave a slightly bigger gap. There's just lots of things that you follow, and that is something you cannot get away from. That is just the way it is. And yet people will try and do things and justify it, but no, it just comes down to you need to learn your styles of lettering. You cannot change it. You thick your things, it is what it is. And if you do something different, then believe you me, it looks like you've made it, and that is the thing that lets a lot of people down. They're very good at what they do, But you need to somehow, you do need to study your shapes of your letters.